I wanted to make a short video with lesson plan tips and tricks based on what I saw you do for your first lesson plan that you wrote for the cultural language project. That project was a simplified project, and the second lesson plan that you write for the semester is going to be a lot more detailed. And so I want to definitely address some areas that I saw problematic in what you shared with me. So the first one is actually not a lesson plan tip. You need to make sure you read project directions. A lot of you forgot to do the summary of the instructional strategy or the population that would benefit from it. You also would sometimes forget your reflection questions that are detailed. And so use that rubric. It'll tell you exactly what you need, and also the project handout. It's very important to get your most points on anything you turn in is to really check over that rubric after you're finished with the project. Okay, number 2 is choose the correct standard. So first of all, I want to emphasize that when you do a lesson plan, you need to break it down to a specific grade level. Some of you had a range, like kindergarten to second grade or pre-K to first. You need to know what grade level you're going to be giving the lesson to really make sure that you have the right standard. The standards will differ by grade level. Second, when you choose that standard, you want to make sure that it is a literacy standard. So that means when you go into the PASAS website, you're choosing English Language Arts. I saw lesson plans about math. I saw lesson plans about health. This is a literacy course, and although you can use a math book or you can use a book about a health concept or a science concept, the standard that you choose for these lesson plans must be from the English Language Arts tab. So that's really important to remember throughout the planning. Now I wanted to show you real quick. 1 second. On the PASAS website, oh, this is nice. It got really small on me. Let me just see if that helps us. On the PASAS website, you want to go in and you want to choose your grade. I'm just going to choose kindergarten for this video. And then always choose English Language Arts. Okay, that's really important. Just something I want to emphasize, the subject area is broken down, and English Language Arts is the first subject area. So every standard you write for this course will be CC.1, and then it builds. If it's something about foundational skills or something about concepts of print or letter sounds, really basic things, it's going to be in the first standard area, which is a foundational skill. And this is where some people got confused. Standard area 2 is reading informational text, and a lot of you chose that, but you had a fiction book. A fiction book would be in standard area 3, which is just reading literature. They actually have the same standards in area 2 and area 3, but standard area 2 is through reading informational text, and standard area 3 is reading fictional text. So make sure that you look at your book and you say, is this fiction or nonfiction? And then you choose accordingly. Standard 4 is writing, anything to do with writing. And standard 5 is speaking and listening. And if you're in some of the upper grades, there are a couple more things, a couple more areas, but for the lower grades, that's all you'll have. Let me just flip back here. All right, so make sure you choose your correct standard. Then after you have your correct standard, you want to write a simple objective. Now, this is not an activity description. Okay, so an activity description sounds like I'm going to read a book, then the students are going to do a matching activity, and then I'm going to share with them how I think they did. It sounds like a big list of your procedure. You actually have an area on the next lesson plan where you do that. You share what your activity for the whole lesson is going to be about. An objective is what you want the students to learn specifically related to that standard. So if your standard is the students will retell the story using props, then your objective is the students will retell the story using props. Now your standard may be a little bit bigger than your objective. Sometimes our standards are, a lot bigger. If we look at a standard here, determine or clarify meaning of unknown or multiple meaning words and phrases based upon grade level reading and content. So that's a vocabulary standard within a fiction text. So within that, you might say the students will sort words that are new into categories. So you can see that objective is simple. Let's look at another one. Let's go up here. With prompting and support, retell familiar stories using key details. So an example of an objective for that standard would be the students will retell the story using props, or the students will sort the story that is scrambled. You want to keep it very, very basic. So whenever you do that objective, it's basic. It starts with the students will, what you want them to do. Remember, pick a measurable verb. So don't use words like comprehend or understand. You want a word like make or retell or sort or read. You want it very measurable. And then anything that's specific to your lesson with props. It might be using sentence strips or using drawing tools. Whatever it is, you want to include that. So it should be one simple sentence. If you look at the feedback I gave to this project, you will see that I reworded many of your objectives. So if I reworded your objective, go back and look at the difference. And when you write that next objective, keep it simple, related to the standard. And most of all, whatever you choose as your objective, that's what your assessment will be looking at. So no more than that. So make sure your assessments are simple as well. All right, next area that we can work on is the assessment must have a recording piece. What that means is if you say, I'm going to watch the students and see what they've done, what happens after you watch them? You'll forget about it. Whenever we do an assessment, you want to have something concrete at the end. Now, for pre-K and kindergarten, and even first grade sometimes, many of our assessments are just watching and then recording what we see. So you can record what you see through anecdotal notes. You can record what you see on a checklist. Those are the two simplest, easiest. Also, you can have a rubric. A rubric is going to be a little more complicated. So you want to save a rubric for something that's a bigger project or something that's much bigger than just, something you just keep simple in your classroom. So you want to make sure, though, every assessment you have is a recording piece. Sometimes it will be something like a worksheet, or they'll be taking a screenshot or a picture of something. But then what will you do with that worksheet? Will you file it? Will you record what was important about it? Will you set a goal from it? Will it be included in a portfolio? So really be specific in that assessment. And again, make sure it relates directly to your objective. All right, number 5. Have an engaging opening to your lesson. Now, some of you started with a book, and a book is okay, but you want to introduce the book. You want to introduce the lesson. So I know we had someone who was sorting healthy foods, fruits and vegetables. So why not bring a basket of fruits and vegetables, or even fruits and vegetables and some unhealthy foods, up to the carpet and let the students figure out, what are we going to learn about today? That inquiry-based or discovery learning makes it more meaningful. Maybe you want to start with a question. Maybe you want to start with a YouTube video. I know some of you were doing alphabet. So you might want to start with a quick little alphabet letter video that you can find on YouTube that's a minute or two long. You want to get students engaged and focused on what you're learning. So don't just jump right into the lesson. You need that opening to grab their attention. And just like an opening, you need closure on your lesson. Closure is how the lesson ends. A lot of times we want to end with a sharing, and that's okay. But the last thing you want to do to wrap up a lesson is Go back to that objective with the students and say,
It's 12 o'clock.
Sorry, my computer talks. What did we learn today and why was this important? You always want them to be able to answer that at the end of the lesson. What did we learn today and why is this important? Now, it might be a little more specific to your lesson, but even having those two questions at the end of your lesson will wrap it up and set the focus for them to move on. So definitely make sure you have a closure on your lesson plan. Vocabulary is important. Many of you had vocabulary listed and great word choices that were important to the lesson, but you need to put it into your procedure. So if you pick out your 3 or 4 words for the lesson and then in your procedure you don't tell me how you're going to address those words, you miss the point because you just have a list of words and you've never connected it to your students. So choose your words and list them on the lesson plan, and then when you get down to your procedure, either before reading or during reading or after reading, address how you're going to have those students interact with those words and learn those words. Make sure you have both steps for vocabulary. All right, next, and I believe the last one, yes, it's the last one. Actually, no, that's it, because we already said look at the rubric. So, we can delete number 8. So, those are the tips that I have for you. Also, I really want to emphasize, if you got, first of all, most of the scores were fine as long as you followed the project directions. I didn't take a ton of points away for the mistakes that you made as long as you had the components there. A lot of you had the wrong standard or a poorly written objective, or things just weren't appropriate for the age level of learner. And I know you're still learning that. You don't know always what kindergartners do or what third graders do. That's okay, and I'll work with you on that. But when you have something missing, that's where you lose points. Moving into this next lesson plan, like I said, it's a lot more specific, and there's a lot more opportunity to lose points if you don't get the components there. So there's a lot more components in this next lesson plan. So make sure that you think about the areas that I've told you and not take that feedback that I gave you on your lesson plan critically. Some of you, I completely reworked your lessons because they just weren't feasible in a classroom. Don't be upset. Just know that you just are learning this new concept, and by giving you a lot of feedback, that's how you learn. So, don't think, oh, I bombed this. Just think, Professor Myers gave me a lot to think about when I plan my next one. It's how you learn. This is also why I wanted you to read lesson plans for your peers. I'm hoping, based on what I read, that you could read some of those lesson plans and say, hey, that would work in a classroom. And maybe you read some of your classmates' lesson plans and said, I don't think that would work. You're allowed to say in your feedback, I'm wondering if that's the right book for a second grader, or I'm wondering if pre-K can sit for an hour. Make your peers sit and think critically about their lesson plans. Do it in a polite, respectful way, but honestly, this is how we learn. And for you being critical reading someone's, just like I am when I read them, it's helping you become a stronger planner. So our next lesson plan project, you will have an instructional strategy to model again. You will give a video demonstration this time, but you will have that chance for feedback. Think critically. Anyone who has a question about lesson planning, if you want me to address, please post it in the comments section of this video, and I hope this was helpful for you.